Should we talk Real Madrid?
Sure, why not?
Where did it go wrong?
Showing up.
Was it just a case of that even at their best they couldn't have handled City today?
Look, this version of Manchester City is untouchable by Real Madrid or by anybody else in the world. Having said that, let's put that to the side for a second. We have been saying for a while now, for Real Madrid, they've been having performances over the course of the season in La Liga where we watch them week in and week out, and they are disinterested, and they don't care. And our excuse for them, built-in excuse, hey, Champions League, this team is different. Mm-hmm. A different version of...
Because of what we've seen in the past.
Right. And so we lean on that, and I think they themselves lean on that. But if you haven't been all that good over the course of a whole long season, and you have had more than one dip over the course of that long season, those things tend to show up in the worst moments. You can't just be an average team and then become a great team just because of the night, just because of the stage, just because of the moment. The flaws that they have shown over the course of the season in La Liga, they all showed up today. When things got difficult for Real Madrid today, the team, they got disconnected. They were no longer a sense of a group. They got disorganized. When they figured out that they couldn't go in transition, that they couldn't get possession of the ball, now Vinicius not working back is no longer oh, well, look how Vinicius, what he does is that he's just waiting for the transition. Well, now it's one less body defending. When Karim Benzema doesn't get involved in any sort of build-up play or provide you the outlet that he usually does for this team and that they rely upon him to provide, then it's one less player. So now you're defending, not with 11 players, now you're defending with 9 against a team like Manchester City that is playing at the level that they were playing. Rodrigo, nowhere to be found. Valverde, nowhere to be found. Toni Kroos, Luka Modric. And look at the names that I'm saying here. These are not small names. These are world superstars. Nowhere to be found in terms of possession, in terms of leadership, in terms of presence, in terms of being Real Madrid. This team had been given signs over the course of the year that they had a performance like this in them, and it eventually caught up to them. And Manchester City exposed everything that had been wrong with this team over the course of the season.
I think you can maybe take it back a bit further than that. I think if you look at the big games in the Champions League last year, including City, the stats might not be too dissimilar. I think if you look at the Champions League final against Liverpool, the stats might not be too dissimilar. And as Ali said, and that was a point that I was thinking about as well, is it's all very well talking about Vinicius Junior in particular cheating and not chasing back. But when you're playing against teams that are producing this kind of quality, it can't be done.
Right.
It maybe can be done on the odd occasion, but it can't be done on a regular basis, not against the elite teams. You can't leave, particularly when you've got guys in the middle of the park that are, mid-30s and above, some of them, 2 of them. You can't leave them as exposed as that front 3 in particular left them exposed tonight. Also, even when Benzema got the ball to feet, it wasn't. He didn't look himself, did he? He gave it away and passed the ball out of play at one point for a 5-yard pass. It's hard to blame the back 4. It's hard to look at the back 4 of Real Madrid and go, well, because what do you do when you're getting no protection and you have the best club side probably in the world in terms of talent and the football they play coming at you wave after wave after wave, and you've got runners from midfield that are not getting picked up, and Gundogan, you've got De Bruyne and floating around, you got John Stones popping in there, you got what do you do as a back 4? There's only so, and by the way, you're trying to take care of Erling Haaland.
Yeah.
There's only so much you can do if the rest of the team are not functioning, and quite frankly, this Real Madrid team are not functioning properly. That's why they got hammered tonight. That's why they were a country mile off Barcelona, who we know are not a great side. Barcelona, by the way, who finished below Bayern Munich and Inter in the group stage in the Champions League and were put out by Man United. So it kind of tells you where Real Madrid are. And I think we saw an Ancelotti, a manager who sat at the side and just did not have any answers tonight.
Frank, were you surprised how poor they were?
You know what? Last year, and it's what Craig, it's what I agree with what Craig just said. You know, I felt that they were holding results, you know, by a string, and it proved that against Paris Saint-Germain, against Chelsea, against Manchester City, it was really a miracle. It's what I call a miracle because statistically talking, they didn't do what they had to do, but somehow they had something special. Who brought them to a win. But I felt that there was something wrong there, and that somehow the truth will come out. And today the truth has come out because that's what it is. You cannot criticize the back four. They try to do their best, but in the middle of the park, when Valverde is not at his top, you have nobody to defend. If Vinicius Junior and Rodrigo doesn't do the job, you are completely unbalanced. And if Karim Benzema doesn't feel the goal, you know, you're going to struggle. It's something you have to change. It's going to come out, you know, Tchouaméni maybe next season with Camavinga in the middle of the park. It's going to stabilize the situation. But you have to renew something in order to be again successful. You've been successful last season, I think. And I'm sorry, and I don't hate Real Madrid as you could have mentioned, Dan, sometimes. It's just that I felt that it was an accident. That wasn't the reality of the Madrid game and the power of that team, of that squad. And we know that Real Madrid can be at the top, but today they show all the weaknesses to the face of the world because that's what it is, and the reality of Real Madrid.
I imagine, Nathan, from a City perspective, watching it, you were thinking, right, Real Madrid are going to find that extra gear in a moment because it's Real Madrid, but that just never came or even really looked like coming.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But one thing I thought, I think many people thought this as well, is that in that second half, they couldn't play as badly as they did in the first. And for the first maybe 5-10 minutes of that second half, they were playing better. But ultimately, they didn't really create much off the back of that. And then before you know it, there was a point where they took a step back and City gained control again within the game. Because, you know, as I say, it's that whole thing, like we say it, oh, but it's Real Madrid and it's the Champions League. You say it because you've seen it happen before. As Frank was alluding to last season, the route to the final to winning that trophy, there were lots of moments in games where it felt as if it was the wrong result for them to go through. But then that's the thing, it's Real Madrid, it's the Champions League. So you just have this feeling that while City were 1-0 up or even at 0-0, Madrid would just find something and it would just happen. But as the guys have said, and those who watch Real Madrid throughout the season, this has been something which doesn't surprise them. And ultimately today, you know, they did offer one of those performances, but they were able to be punished by a side who, you know, probably had their best game of the whole season, arguably, like Guardiola's whole tenure, and they were able to punish them for that whole period. So fair play to Man City. They made Real Madrid look extra basic. And it's not something that we're used to seeing, especially in this competition in these final stages, because many of us can remember times when City have gone out and other teams have gone out. But for myself, up until this point, I can't remember many losses Madrid have had in Europe. But this is one of those ones which I think from a City perspective, you'll speak about for a long time to come.
If you look at, Ancelotti, if we're being critical and he's had a lot of praise, you know, John Stones looked like a natural midfielder. That's how much time and space he had. I thought Rodri was brilliant again. Brilliantly efficient. He just takes the ball and he allows them to shepherd it from one side to the other. He takes it off the defenders, switches play. But none of this was a surprise for Ancelotti.
Right.
He came into this game, Guardiola, as I said, I'm not doing anything different. This is what we've done most of the year. We've had success. I'm not going to tinker. So they knew Rodri and Stones, for the most part, were going to be in the middle. And yet he allowed those two wide guys, Rodrigo and Vinicius Junior, to stand up out in the wide position while they got absolutely screwed in the middle of the park. That's poor. It's not like City did anything tonight and went, oh, didn't see that coming.
Right.
He played it the way they've been playing it for weeks.
The worst
and it's
thing,
been successful.
Sorry, Craig. The worst thing that could have happened for Real Madrid is going into the Camp Nou and have the performance that they had in beating Barcelona 4-0 Copa del Rey semifinal. And the reason I say that is because that was sort of the beginning of Carlo Ancelotti playing Rodrigo on the right, because he gives this team a natural outlet and a credible threat on the right-hand side. But it sacrifices an extra body in the midfield. And if they ever needed an extra body in the midfield, was today. But how do you, as a manager, rationalize to yourself and to your players, hey, we went to the Camp Nou and won 4-0, playing with these guys, with this squad, with this group, right? We were dominant. We were good in transition. We dominated the midfield. And not think to yourself, this is my best 11. This is my best group. But it may not have been what the game called for. And I know that this is probably something that Carlo Ancelotti is going to think about and say, well, we could have played with that Valverde hybrid role, and that's how they were successful in last year's Champions League. But he himself in the press conference said, that's what got us Champions League last year, but this is what has gotten us to the semifinals of Champions League this year, and so this is how we're going to go. A decision that I think he's going to regret.
I think he exposed two of his greatest players, two of Real Madrid's, I'd say greatest midfielders, certainly. Obviously, in the last 10 years, they've been two of the best midfielders in world football, Toni Kroos and Luka Modric. In particular, Valverde's a younger lad. He exposed them to arguably one of the biggest pummelings of their careers. Yeah. And he left them exposed, and he sat on the bench and watched it. You know, not for 10 minutes, not for 20 minutes, for 40, 45 minutes. He sat there and watched those two in particular been dragged from pillar to post. And he kind of allowed... And look, I'm not suggesting if they got everybody back in and Vinicius Jr. was 10 yards, 20 yards deeper and 10 yards narrower, and Rodrigo the same, and Benzema was 20 yards deeper, I'm not suggesting City wouldn't have won. But they certainly would not have been exposed to the embarrassing positions they found themselves in. I mean, it was a chasing, wasn't it? They were running round like, whenever they turned round, a City player had 20 yards free space to run into. And whenever they closed that down, City switched it, did another 20 yards. And my criticism of Ancelotti is not that they could have been the better team, because they could not have, but he let some of the best midfielders that have played this game be exposed to one of the biggest pastings they've probably had, probably in their career.
Ancelotti said he wants to stay at Real Madrid as long as they want him. If you're Florentino Perez, the president of Real Madrid, what do you do?
Well, I look at what the options are, and I evaluate the current situation of the club and what is the plan going forward. This is a team, and I think we must acknowledge this, there's a transition happening. We just mentioned Luka Modric and Toni Kroos. How do you transition away from Luka Modric and Toni Kroos? Casemiro's already gone, and so you feel like now that the wheels are turning and you're having to find players who are going to be the players that whoever is managing Real Madrid is going to call upon for the next decade or so.
You get rid of him.
If I'm Florentino Perez, I do not get rid of Carlo Ancelotti. If I don't find a better option, and what are the options?
I've got Zinedine Zidane here.
Where is he? I don't see him.
He's next to me.
Hey, Zizou.
Yeah, I know. Frank is an idiot.
I don't think so. I don't think so. I stay with Carlo Ancelotti because I'm thinking I'm bridging a gap for what I think I want next. And for what I think I want next is what other managers are being groomed for, whether that's Xabi Alonso or whether that's Raúl. If you bring Zinedine Zidane, this becomes a longer-term project. You keep Carlo Ancelotti for the next season. Ancelotti, if he wants to stay, because he can go and take the Brazil job, which, Carlo, you don't have to listen to me, but go take the Brazil job. All right?
I thought you were going to offer yourself as an assistant.
Well, if you need an assistant as well, I dabble in Portuguese every once in a while. Look, I think you have Carlo Ancelotti be part of this transition if indeed he doesn't take the Brazil job. And then you go and search for what you think is going to be the next guy for the long-term period. And that long-term may be Xabi Alonso or Raúl. If you go Zinedine Zidane, it changes the trajectory of the club.
Last year. It's been a long day.
Hasn't really.
You don't know what my day's been like.
Oh, I do. You've told me about it. You got up at 6. You had to take the dogs out before you went and played golf. That's what I hear.
Real Madrid players might as well. I tell you what, it looked like the Real Madrid players took the dogs out at 6 this morning as well.
And played golf.
Look, Yesterday, I thought, nah, Ancelotti will stay. And we talked on the show yesterday about, do the Real Madrid fans have an acceptance that City are a better side?
Yeah.
And they might win, but that's kind of where they are.
It's the manner of the defeat.
But what we saw tonight, you know as well as anybody, how there's knee-jerk reactions to bad performances. And that was an embarrassment. And whether Florentino Perez feels that, yeah, as Ali said, probably the pertinent thing to do would be sit with him until you get somebody better. But does he want to make a noise to get a Real or somebody to get the fans, kind of, we're front foot football, no more of this defending, no more of this counter-attack, we're going to make some changes. Just because that was such an embarrassment. I wonder if it had been 1-0 and City had got through and had dominated, but Real Madrid had hung in there, give themselves a chance, I think possibly it might have been a different story, but that could signal, that defeat and the manner of it could signal possibly the end for him.
It's the manner of the defeat, and it's their competition, isn't it? They always talk about Champions League is Real Madrid's baby, and yet they've been exposed in front of the world today, Frank. Would Zidane want the job back?
I don't know. I didn't call him, but we talked about that like a month ago. And it's always a possibility to see Zidane. It depends on what they want to do and what Perez wants to do. I wouldn't go because I think you need to turn the page and try to see something different. And like Barcelona did with Xavi, maybe going to Raúl, trying to go for a different way of playing with a long-term process and getting back to your best maybe within like 3 or 4 years. It's a possibility. But it's always a possibility with Zizou. Zizou is there. He loves the club. He doesn't want to move from there. And I think it's always at Real Madrid's disposal. And if they call him back, he might be successful again. You never know.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.